Benvenuti, welcome everyone. My name is Romina Montanari. I'm the Food and Wine Event Manager for the Italian Cultural Center in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And that is the prime non-profit organization dedicated to the promotion of Italian culture and language in the Twin Cities. Today we're going to present a new series. It's called Storie di famiglia, made in Italy. Meet the people behind the label. We're going to start with the episode 1, and we're going to start with Labor of Love, Wine Families of Piemonte. That is going to be presented by Suzanne Hoffman. Before we start, though, I have to share some housekeeping tips so everybody can enjoy the presentation better. For example, it would be best if you keep your muted button on. The mute button is in the corner left of your screen. Also, the best if you can choose the speaker view. That means when you look on the top corner of your screen, you can have a gallery view, means you have a lot of little square with people, and you have a speaker view, means the person that is speaking is bigger on your screen. So when you are in speaker view, you know, because you have the option you see the gallery view on the corner in case you want to switch. But actually you are in the speaker view when you see the big person speaking in front of you. Then I want to also show you that when we're going to do the share of the picture, you're going to see the picture on one side and Suzanne on the other side. In order to see Suzanne, she's the main speaker, is up to you to choose on the top of the square where you see the faces. You have to choose show active speaker video, because only that way is up to you. I cannot control that. It's up to you to choose that, so you can see only Suzanne bigger and next to Suzanne the picture. Also, I would like to tell you that she's going to do a presentation for 45 minutes, and at the end we're going to do 15 minutes of question and answer. And please write your question in the chat. I will call your name, and I will let you also ask this question to her at the end, but also write them in the chat. Also, I would like to inform you that we are recording the presentation. And right now, I just want to introduce finally Suzanne Hoffman. She's a native of New Orleans. She's a writer. She's the author of the book Labor of Love, Wine Family Women of Piemonte. She's immersing herself for the last 20 years, with the culture of the Langhe, Roero, and Monferrato wine areas. First of all, from her home in Switzerland, and now from her home in the Colorado Rockies. Enjoy the presentation.
Thank you so much, Romina, and thank you, everybody. This is a bit of a challenge. I think all of us have been a little challenged on Zoom. I love to interact with my audience, and I'm looking at myself right now, but I'm also looking at some of you. So thank you so much for joining us. This has really been a tumultuous time, as you well know, for the Piemontese. So it's really, Romina, you can go back a little bit. It's really been a hard time from the beginning of the year. Actually, before the year, the Piemontese were dealing with the tariffs. We were talking, that's kind of technical, I won't get into all of that, but just know that it could have decimated their industry. And then right when they think everything is sort of put on hold for a while, we get COVID. And I think everybody knows the story about that. They have been as brave, as courageous as always. And I think the stories that are in my book really help you see how the courage of the past is helping them get through this time. And so in 2012, I decided I was going to write this book because I discovered back in 2003, when I started hearing these stories, that no one had written these stories down about World War II. And as Giancarlo Montaldo, a very well-known journalist and much loved he was much a politician in Piemonte as well. He said recently in a letter to the editor of the Gazzetta d'Alba that we will overcome this. The Piemontese will overcome this, because in the past they had much greater privations, much more difficult times. So I guess you might say, if this has been much easier with the modern technology that we have, but they have the past to rely on to know that they'll go forward in the future and be prosperous once again. So what we're going to do right now is just talk a little bit from a very high altitude view of Piemonte. I could talk for hours about it, but I think it's best if we just talk about some of the basics of the region and get into some of the families that really inspired me to keep going back and to write the book. And what you're looking at right now is the cover of my book, and those are the hands of Chiara Boschis. She was the first woman vintner in the village of Barolo. In 1980, her father bought a vineyard, excuse me, folks. He bought a winery from someone who had passed away. And so for the first, Chiara convinced him to buy it. I mean, what's a woman going to do with a winery? But then Chiara continued her studies. That was the deal. She would continue her studies, and her brothers and her father would continue with the running of that winery, plus Borgogno, the other winery they owned. And then Chiara would come into it. And she came into it like a house on fire. And in a few weeks, you'll get to meet Chiara. She'll be joining us when the Barolo night. But in 1990, Chiara had her first vintage, and she also got one of the esteemed awards that you can get, one of the esteemed ratings from the Gambero Rosso, which is known as the Tre Bicchieri. So she came on the scene big time, and she's been a huge inspiration for me, as well as so many of the women today who look up to her as really a leader. And below that, you see the Castello della Volta, which is quite prominent in the Barolo area, once owned by the Marchesi di Barolo, and now is owned by the Abono family, who bought Marchesi di Barolo. So what does Piemonte mean? It means the foot of the mountains. And the reason why that is so, it's so obvious there when you stand in Langhe, if it's not a foggy day, you can see the mountains in the distance. So you have three different areas of Piemonte. You have the mountains, you have the plain, and you have the hills. And we're going to talk mostly about the hills today. And that's the wine areas of the Langhe, the Roero, and the Monferrato. So where is Piemonte in relation to the rest of Italy? Could we see the map? Romina? Could we see the map? So I think that'll help you orient yourselves a little bit. You see the mountains in the distance there. And now we're looking at the map of Piemonte. And down in the corner, you see the map of Italy on the lower right-hand corner. And there's a dark spot. That's Piemonte in the northwest part. To the northwest of Piemonte is the very small region, Valle d'Aosta. And then to the north is Switzerland, and to the west is France. So we are basically going to be talking about two areas in Cuneo, Asti, and also in Alessandria. So that gives us three different regions, three different provinces within Piemonte that the wine areas are in. The wine areas are not political divisions. They are simply wine demarcations, wine area demarcations. And so you can see there, Turin is in the upper left-hand corner, and that is the capital of Piemonte. Turin at one time was the capital, the first capital of unified Italy. And then it quickly passed to Florence and finally to Rome. It was a very, very important part in the unification of Italy, because it was really the home of the Risorgimento, not the home of it, but really a lot of the thinkers and a lot of the movers, famous Count Cavour, he was part of it. And so Piemonte played a very large role in Italy's birth as a unified nation. In Piemonte, you have really two major types of economic, and now of course growing the third one, tourism. But the economic drivers are really the wine industry, and also you have a lot of industry like Fiat, Oliveri. And during the war, when the Allies were bombing northern Italy, Turin was definitely in the radar spot of many of the bombers because of the industry that's located there. And you can see Milan off to the east. That's Lombardy, the big region of Lombardy, which you've heard quite a bit about, unfortunately, in the last few months. So the Savoy family ruled Piemonte for many centuries. And then, of course, after the unification in the 1860s, we had continuation of the king, and then, of course, came the war, and we have now the Republic. So let's move on to a little bit talking about Piemonte as a UNESCO zone. It's very important, and it has 4 different UNESCO sites. You have the residences of the royal families. There you see one of the important castles. That was the castle of Count Cavour, and in the distance you see the Cottian Alps, and on the other side that would be France. And this is part of the UNESCO zone for vineyard landscape. So it includes Langhe, where this is located. The Grinzani Cavour, the Castello di Grinzani Cavour you see there, is located in the Barolo region. And then to the north of the Tanaro River, you have Roero, and then further to the east, Monferrato. And part of Monferrato, all of Roero and Langhe all comprise the UNESCO World Heritage Site for landscape, vineyard landscape. And you have the residences of the House of Savoy located around Turin. And then also, and this is something that I have found that people don't really, who go to the wine region, there's so much to take in there, and they don't realize what else lies outside the wine region. For example, the Sacri Monti, the sacred mountains of both Piemonte and Lombardia. You know, you have 9 sacred mountains in the north of Italy, and those are part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then you also have, these are groups of chapels and other architectural features from the 17th and 16th centuries. And they're dedicated to various aspects of the Christian faith. You also have something I never really knew about until I started writing the book, and I have yet to visit them. And that's the prehistoric pile dwellings. These are located in several countries to the north from Italy, including France, through the Alps. And these are prehistoric, there are 111 of them, prehistoric dwellings. The pile was on stilts. It's a house on stilts. And they range from 5,000 to 500 BC. And this remains on my list to go see, because I never knew about this until I was starting to research. So you can see here the topography is quite interesting, where you have the mountains way off in the distance, and then you see on the ridge, in the, just this side of the mountains, that's La Mora, and La Mora is one of the 11 Barolo villages. Between the Barolo area, which is the hilly area, and those mountains is a flat area. That is the Tanaro River Valley, which then goes north and over east. And then you have also the Po River Valley, which is a very, very famous river, of course. And it's also the region where a lot of the risotto comes from, a lot of rice fields through that area. So it's a very rich agricultural area. You have wine in the vineyards, not just in this area, but all throughout Piemonte. You have several wine regions that we'll talk about in a minute. And then you have the mountains. And in the mountains, there's a lot, there's a lot of history and a lot of culture and a lot of agriculture in that area. You can see here the diversity from the vineyards looking to Monviso. That is kind of to the Piemontese what the Matterhorn is to the Swiss. You can see it from all over. It's really an amazing sight on a clear day. But in the mountains, for example, in Castelmagno, there's a very famous cheese. And Castelmagno is, there you see Valliera. That's back in 2013 when I took this picture. The whole village, the whole hamlet has been renovated. It was abandoned in the 50s when people just gave up and moved to Torino and Alba to have jobs after so many years of privation, both between the two wars, before the wars, and after as well. And they said, we've had enough of the countryside, we're going to the city. Well, a group of young people, including Chiara Boschis, Enzo Bolietti, and Chiara's brother Cesare, and several others, got together, about 10 of them, lawyers, architects, engineers. They bought half of this little village, Valiera, the Refugio, and they renovated it. And today it is an agriturismo. It is amazing. They bought this for the purpose of being able to bring people back up to the Occitani region and to rejuvenate the making of this very famous cheese up in the mountains. So that's a real special place. And if you're ever looking for a wonderful place to hike, to eat, to have some culinary lessons, just to get away from life, that's the place to go. So when we talk about the wine areas, do we have the map there? I mean, yeah, there you can see how many different wine areas we have in Piemonte. And we're looking primarily towards the bottom part, north of Liguria. You can see that Piemonte is surrounded by mountains on three sides. The Ligurian Apennines on the south, you have the Cottian Alps over on the western part, and then to the north you have the Pennines, and then Switzerland's to the other side. I began going to Piemonte because I lived in Switzerland for many years. And just like my friends and neighbors here in Colorado go out to Utah, to Moab in the springtime, we used to pop on the other side of the mountains to get some sunshine. And so in 1999 and 2000, I became bewitched. And this is the land I love quite a lot. And I have to thank the Wine Scholar Guild and Vine Maps for providing this map to us. We can see that in the north, for example, you have areas that's known as Alto Piemonte. You see an area called Geme and Gattinara, some of those different appellations. This is an area that is growing in importance, as well as another area called Colli Tortonesi, where we can find another wine that is really becoming quite famous. And I don't like the idea of calling it the next big thing, but it is. It's the Timorasso, and we'll talk about that a little bit. In Piemonte, you can about imagine it's big in terms of the vineyards, but of course, there's 150,000 acres of vineyards all throughout the region. There's on average about 66 million gallons of wine is the annual production. That's a lot of wine. And when you think about the fact that all of a sudden the market's collapsed and there's just, they're not shipping wine. First, they were hurt by the tariff threat in America, and then they were hurt by the COVID, and all the orders were canceled. So there's a lot of wine sitting both not both, but all throughout Europe, but particularly some of the younger wines that need to be sold people are getting very nervous. So what is the area where most people know? They know Barolo and Barbaresco, which is located in the Langhe. Nebbiolo was first mentioned in 1268. It is a grape. It is called the noble grape. And Barolo and Barbaresco are made from 100% Nebbiolo. And it's grown not only in Langhe. You can see what I referred earlier to Gattinara and Geme and Lessona and also Valtellina. It's grown up there as well. But Italy, Piemonte, and Lombardy are really the areas where Nebbiolo grows best. It is home to Nebbiolo. And Barolo is, of course, one of the most famous of the areas, along with Barbaresco. There's 11 villages in Barolo, and each village, except for one, sits up on the top of a hill. And the one that doesn't sit on the top of a hill is Barolo, the village of Barolo. Barolo was made quite famous by both Count Cavour, Count Camillo Benzo Cavour, and Giulia Colbert Folletti, the Marchesa di Barolo. She was the last Marchesa. The two of them, back in the mid-1800s, were really the drivers to bringing us the Barolo we know today, the dry Barolo. Before, it was rather sweet. And even though it was a very popular wine amongst the aristocracy, it wasn't the wine that we know and love so much today. So also we have in that area, and I'll just take a moment to say, this is just an overview. I am a wine family expert. I've got a great wine expert sitting there, Cheryl Chovy, a dear friend of mine from Salt Lake City who's a wine educator. And we're going to be joined in a little while by John Rittmaster, and I'll tell you about John. And so if you have any specific questions on the wines, they'll be able to help you with those. But I just want to give you the lay of the land and give you some of the benchmarks in the area. So Barbaresco is a much smaller area than Barolo. It's located to the northeast of Barolo, and it has only 3.5 villages. What do I mean by half? It's a frazione, which is like a suburb. It's a little village, part of Alba. And so that's Barbaresco, Trezo, Neve, and the little one, it's San Rocco San Odelvio. And in 1895, we saw the birth of Barbaresco. And like Barolo, it is made from 100% Nebbiolo grape. But growing in great popularity, and I'm very excited about this, is Alta Langa. And this is an area that's to the south and to the east of the Langhe. It's located in the Langhe, but it is an area that is much higher. And so many of the producers are buying land up there to plant their white grapes, and they're making metodo classico. This is the classic form of a sparkling wine made like champagne. The French get very cross with us if we call it champagne. So it's spumante metodo classico. Spumante means sparkling wine. Metodo classico is made in the classical method. And it's been made in the area, in Canelli, by Gancia, we have also Contrado, that have been making the wine there since the late 1800s. So if you come along in about, let's see, on the 14th of June, you'll be able to hear from Carlo Del Tetto, who will tell us about his family's foray into the Alta Langa area. And the other area we have is Roero. And if you see, I don't have the cursor, I keep pointing to my own map. Roero is located, it's kind of in the center. You can see it's pink, and it's north of the Tanaro River. There you go. Thank you so much, Romina. And Roero is kind of been living in the shadow, I think, of Langhe, but has really been flexing its muscles in the last 20 years. And it's the home to the grape known as Arnese, a white grape. A rascally white grape. And we have the father of Luca Corrado from Vieti to thank for the Arnese that we're enjoying today, because even though the grape has been around for centuries, Luca's father was the one who really saw the potential and bought the grapes and preserved the grapes as a popular variety. And so we also have in Monferrato, which is over to the east of the area of Langhe. And in that area, you have the famous Moscato d'Asti. Long before Barolo became the household name of enophiles, there was Moscato d'Asti. That was really the wine of queens. And today, there are some fabulous, fabulous producers of this young wine, and some are even aging it. For example, Alessandro Boido at Cadgal, in Monferrato, he is making some aged Moscato, which is fabulous. But and I also encourage you to try different producers of Moscato right now, because it is a young wine, primarily drunk young, and they really need to move it. So if you're looking for a great way to support the Piemontese, it's to buy their wines. And I ask you to really consider buying these Moscato d'Asti right now. You're going to hear from a wonderful producer of Moscato in a few weeks in our last installment on the 28th from Andrea Costa of Marenco. And also, Monferrato is home to Barbera d'Asti. And it's a wonderful, Barbera is the most planted grape in Piemonte. You have Barbera d'Alba, and you have Barbera Nisa Monferrato, and Barbera d'Asti. And each one has its own individual characteristics. you can find more and more wonderful Barbera here in the United States, and I urge you to look for those on the shelves. We're going to be giving you lots of information over the coming weeks on how you can acquire these wines and where you can find information to broaden your horizons on the wines. But what I really want to dive into today are the families, because they were the inspiration for me, not just to go to Piemonte, but to keep going back. I love the wine, I love the food, but as I said to you before, I'm really a wine family expert. And that's why I wrote the book, because no one, it seemed, had written these stories down that I was hearing from World War II. And particularly in English. Now, the famous Piemontese author, Nuto Ravelli, wrote a wonderful book, L'Anello Forte, back about in the 60s about the women. He went all around in the mountains, in the flat, and also in the hills of the wine regions and interviewed these women, many old women, and got their testimonials. We have him to thank for that. I would love to see it translated. It's a really tough book for someone with my rudimentary skills, but it's a beautiful book. And the women of Piemonte, though they lacked financial freedom, they didn't lack power. They had quite a bit of power. And one of the things about it is that you had to really convince, like if you wanted to sell a cow to a farmer, if you were a cattle seller, you had to convince not the farmer, but the farmer's wife. And so for a long time, women, though they lacked the financial freedom, they controlled the purse strings. And one of the women that really captivated my imagination from the beginning and continues to do so today was Beatrice Rizzolio of the Cascina della Rosa. And you can fast forward to that one, Romina. And the family, the Rizzolio Sobrino family now, you can see on, well, we can go back to the other one. That is Giovanna Rizzolio and her two sons, Riccardo and Davide, and her husband Italo. And they are running the farm today. Italo and Giovanna have actually retired, if you can call it that. They still keep a toe in the business, but their two sons are doing an amazing job and really making this small winery a very well-known name around the world. Giovanna was the first woman producer in Barbaresco. It was not an easy time for her. She had a lot of difficulties, but thanks to the support of Alberto Di Grezi, who we'll talk about in a few minutes, and Jeffrey Chilcott, the cellar master at the Marchesi Di Grezi winery, Giovanna was able to get through those hard times and really create something that now their sons are just doing a fabulous job. In our next photo, we'll see the woman that really, her DNA runs strong through Giovanna. This is Beatrice Rizzolio, known as Nonna Bice. She was a very powerful woman. She had two flour mills, one in Nizza Monferrato to the east, and one in Alba. And you know, I don't have to tell you, but if you were a producer of food, particularly flour, in those difficult times between the two wars, during fascism and then during the Nazi occupation, you had a lot of power. So she was the woman that people came to for advice. She and her husband were the ones that co-signed the note for the Ferrero brothers to be able in 1943 to move into a bigger laboratory. And now we have today, of course, one of the largest employers in Alba, in the Langhe, Ferrero. And she was someone who was so courageous that by day she dealt with the Nazi officers because had to. They were the occupiers between 1943 and early 1945. And by night, and also by day, she was hiding Jews in both her mill in Alba, which was bombed at one time, and also one of her homes in the hills just outside of Alba. She was also, known as a savior, So someone, quite a few of the East European Jews that came through that time from France and came over into Piemonte when the armistice was declared, they have her to thank for hiding them. And they came back, some of the families came back and visited every year until her passing in 1993. She has her name inscribed in the Garden of the Righteous Among Nations in Yad Vashem. But when in 1975, when the Israelis were honoring her and many of the other Italian saviors, she did not go to Rome to receive the award, I would say. She said, I didn't do it for an award. I did it because it was the right thing to do, which most of the Italian saviors, just about all the Italian saviors said. We did it because it was the right thing. And the other reason why she didn't go is Beatrice never slept anywhere else but her own bed. So if she could not return home at night, either in her house in Nizza Monferrato or one of her homes in the countryside or in Alba, she didn't travel there. So that's also, there's a lot of really interesting stories about her courage that sometime you really should delve into. Like she stood in front of a firing squad that was going to execute some young teenage boys as part of the reprisal. They had this thing called the 10-to-1 reprisal. If one Nazi soldier or officer was killed, 10 Italians had to be killed as a retaliation. And she stood down a firing squad, and those boys lived. That's just one of the many stories of her. And Giovanna is, like I said before, Giovanna is someone who has had quite a few difficulties, but because the DNA of Nonna Bice runs so strong through her, and you can see Nonna Bice's portrait on the left, Giovanna was able to overcome these many difficulties. So another family that was really instrumental in me wanting to go back was the de Grésy family, Marchesi di Grésy. And you can see in this picture the Villa Giulia, which is the highest point in the Barbaresco area. And just to the left, way down in kind of an amphitheater of vineyards, is the family's winery known as Martininga. And then in the foreground is the newly opened Di Grésy. It's a B&B that they've opened, and that's the old farmhouse that they've converted into a B&B. And with the villa being the highest point in Barbaresco, that made it a really nice spot for the Nazis to stay when they were occupying. So the officers stayed inside of the villa, and the soldiers were out in the grounds. And it was quite a trying time. But Giulia, the grandmother of the current Marchese, Alberto, she was another tough woman. She was, of the same type, the same generation as Beatrice Rizzolio. And so she stood her ground fairly well with them. And there you have another view of the Villa Giulia, and you can see the mountains in the distance. I love this photo because it's so representative of the area, and with the fog down in the valley and then the blue skies above and the mountains in the distance. So a lot of Anglophones, there's Giulia, and with her father, and her father Francesco, and Francesco Pilizzari, he was actually a secretary to one of the early prime ministers of Italy. And Giulia was a diminutive lady. But she was strong. And so was Nonna Bice. So maybe, strong things come in small packages. But she was the nonna of Alberto di Grésy, the current Marchesa. His dad died when he was 4 years old, so he was really raised by women. He had a lot of strong feminine influence in his life. And we can see that today. He has been such a great help to so many of the young vintners, particularly the young women in the area. And his own daughter, Ludovica, has joined her brother, Alessandro, as the next generation in the Marchesi di Grésy winery. We have Jeffrey Chilcott was one of the early people I met there, who really was the door opener in the late 90s, early 2000s. It remains so today, but in those days before we had the websites and the cell phones, it was very hard to make contact. And Jeffrey was really the great door opener for many of us. So the next family that really influenced me, that I think so many people know the name of, is Gaia. And here we have Clotilde Ray, and she is the grandmother of Angelo Gaia. Clotilde was another tough woman. She was from Selberton in the mountains to the east, to the west of Torino. Gaia, her great-granddaughter, Gaia, referred to her as not a woman who was stingy with money. She had a great respect for money. And so every purchase of a vineyard or the expansion of a canteen, of the cellar, had to have her approval. She was so clever. In late winter, when the snows were starting to melt, she would walk with her husband, Angelo, the grandfather of the current Angelo, who was a surveyor, a land surveyor, and they would look and see where did the snow melt first. And those were the vineyards that they bought. So today, I don't have to tell you, but they have quite a wonderful selection of fabulous wines. But we have her to thank for really keeping the family winery going. It started in the mid-1800s, but she was really the strong one who got through the difficult times and kept the family together. So another thing she would like to do in the next slide, she would drive these big demijohns. Not all of the wine was put in bottles. She put them in the big, big containers that had the wicker baskets around them. And she would on the hills and go to this train station in Barbaresco train station, which is down in the valley, so that the wine could be loaded and taken down to Liguria for sale. Nowadays we think about the young people that get on planes and they jet set over to Tokyo in normal times and New York and all over the world. People in Clotilde Ray and Beatrice Rizzolio's time, they could never imagine that their great-grandchildren would be doing that. But it's because of the courage and the determination of these people that we have the wineries and the prosperity that they have come to enjoy so much in the last 20 to 30 years. I see too, Romina, that we have John Rittmaster has joined us. Could we unmute John? John, are you there?
I'm here. I don't know if you can, yep, there we go. Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi, John.
And thank you for the invite.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to introduce you. You can hear John. You can't see him. You can take me off spotlight if you want, if it's not too much trouble and we can see John.
I'm not that much to look at.
John is one of the original Piemonte, we call him Piemonte pioneer. John, when was the first time you went to Piemonte?
A while ago.
Mm-hmm. All right, smart aleck. John is from Walnut Creek, California, and he owns Prima Wine, Prima Restaurant, and he is I call him my sorcerer, because when my clients, I do these small wine groups, wine tours, and people come back and they want the wine, and if they can't find it, if they want it here in the States, John's the one that can find it for them in most cases. And I thought we'd bring John in because he's somebody that if you can't find a particular wine in your area, we will provide you with his information and you can talk to John about it. John, tell us about those early days in Piemonte.
Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. Yeah, when I first started to go, I like to say that everybody drove a three-wheeled motorbike, the Ape, and had these little tri-corner hats with a little feather in it, with an unlit cigarette, and they all looked like our kind of stereotypical Italian guy. And now everyone drives Audi station wagons, so a lot has changed. In the old days, when I first started going, we could source wines from, there was Prunotto, Fontana Fredda, Ceretto. There were a few kind of very, very well-known wineries, and we had no sort of inkling that this explosion was going to happen. And I know that Suzanne has mentioned, or will mention probably at some point, Chiara Boschi's and the Barolo boys. They were a group of people who kind of got this idea. They kind of coalesced around a gentleman by the name of Mark de Grazia, and he helped them all kind of pull themselves, a generational change too, but pulled themselves into this kind of age of modernity. And these were guys that actually had passports. Some actually had spoke a little bit of English and weren't afraid to get on an airplane and go and promote their wines, which is how we got to know them, because the Barolo boys came to our restaurant in 1993 and had a big rave up and a party that people still talk about. I've been, I used to work for a California winery, Robert Mondavi, and Opus One before that. But now my life totally changed. So I'm Italian, particularly a Barolo aficionado. I'd love to come. I try to go 2 or 3 times a year. We've got a lot of friends there. And one of them is Suzanne. So I really appreciate all this. Suzanne's always putting in a good word for my little wine store and restaurant. I appreciate that. But anyway, pleasure to meet you all. It's a great place. Suzanne wrote the book I wanted to write. For years and years and years and years, I was like, oh, God. And I met Chiara, I met the Scavino sisters, I met Silvia Altare, I met all these people. I was like, God, there's a book here. This is an incredible change in the perception. You got to realize how parochial and how paternal this area was. I mean, there's still, even now, there's old men who say, God, my only regret was I didn't have any sons. And I have girls running the winery. And Luciano Sandrone was the last person I spoke to. He was like, God, you sell everything you make. Your daughter, Barbara, is promoting your wine all around the world. You got big scores and everything else. What the hell do you have to complain about?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's been an amazing sea change. So anyway.
Well, and we have you to thank for making the market for Piemonte. Many of the producers over in the west coast of the United States, and then throughout the United States now, if you want to go to Prima Wine, really sign up for John's newsletter. We'll provide you with those links. He has some great deals, some great. It's worth it to go out to California when it's possible, just to go to one of his big wine dinners with some of these producers. But we really have John to thank. We have Bobby Stuckey to thank. We have Mark de Grazia. These are people that saw the potential, and they went over and they gave these wineries a chance. They gave them a voice. They gave them shelves in their shops. And the children and the grandchildren of the people that John was first dealing with are now the ones that are carrying it into the future and doing a marvelous job. So thank you, John. Stick around. But let's see if we've got any questions out there. Romina?
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you, John. And it's such a treat to have you both here today, okay? And I go ahead maybe with a question to see if anyone has some question. I see that Cheryl has a question. Maybe she can unmute herself and ask the question.
Well, no question. I just wanted to say many thanks to John, because he is helping me get a boatload of Odero and
is that Cheryl? Oh, that's Cheryl. Hello, how do you do?
Hi, John.
People I've never met in person. You see, that's
you met me a long time ago when you were first opening, and you helped me study for my French wine scholar exam by getting through a blind tasting of 14 Burgundies at Prima Fini. When we were both a lot younger. We don't recognize each other anymore.
Well, you both look great. Cheryl, I'll let you know, Cheryl is a wine educator. She's located in Salt Lake City, and she is a wine scholar. What is it, Cheryl? You're now, would you tell us what certifications you're holding now? Because it's amazing.
It's through the Wine Scholar Guild, and I'm a French wine scholar with a master's certification in Provence and the Côte d'Aron, and I'm studying the southern part of France, Languedoc-Roussillon now. And I just, in January, was certified as a Spanish wine scholar. And I still feel like Italy's too daunting, so I'm still continuing to study my Italian wine scholar. So that's down the road. Hopefully I should be making more use of my time, right? I should be knocking this thing out all this time. But maybe by the end of the year, by the time I see all my friends in Piemonte, I'll be an Italian wine scholar certified again.
Well, the thing,
Italian wine is what you drink while you're studying for everything else.
Well, you have to drink exactly what you are studying because it just brings it home so nicely.
well, you know, it's people like John and people like Cheryl who are educating others, and really they play an integral role in the marketing of these wines and in the education of people, not just in the wines themselves, but also in the region and in the people. And I wanted them to jump in because they are very important in my life right now and the work that I do with the families. So I thank you both very much. Do we have any other questions, Romina? Shirley?
So far, no, I don't see any question. Please write your question in the chat button so I can call your name.
I see Amanda's here. Okay.
I see a lot of appreciation note, appreciation sentence
Well,
for you guys.
well, let me just say, you know, since if anybody has any more questions, jump in. But let's see. I know that we are going to be coming up with the full schedule next week. We're going to be letting people know. It looks like people would like to join in for the wine families, because coming up, we have 4 Sundays where each Sunday, starting the 7th of June, we have 2 members of wine families, and they're all from my book, and they're representing the regions of Barolo Barbaresco and Monferrato. So I hope you'll join us for those as well, because instead of me talking nonstop, they'll be talking, and you'll hear all about their wines, and they have some really more interesting stories to tell you. But just if I could, for a moment, tell you what this has all done to enchant me. I'm working on my next book because, and it's a novel, and there's so many stories that are left to be told that I didn't get to tell in my book, or stories that I want to have a bigger audience. And so so that's my project right now. And the setting for it, of course, no surprise, is Piemonte, but Alta Longa is really the area that you're going to get to know about through this book. It was an area of intense fighting during the war, during the occupation. The partisans had their headquarters in Cortemelia, which is located in the Alta Longa. And I want to raise awareness of what the Italians did during the occupation to save Jews and save political prisoners. And I urge you to read a wonderful book called Beneath the Scarlet Sky. It's a novelized version of a true story of Pino Lela. And he lived in Milan, and at 17 was with a priest up in the mountains taking Jews and political prisoners who had escaped north to Switzerland. So it's a wonderful story, and I'm so excited that I'm part of this time when we're getting these stories out. You know, that story hadn't been told for 70 years, and Mark Sullivan came upon it at a cocktail party. And so please, Thread of Grace is another one about people who were helping save Jews during this horrific time, because in Italy they had 50,000 Jews living there at the beginning of the war, not counting all the refugees, because they were the last country to close its borders to immigrants. They had 40,000 at the end. Now 10,000 is a lot to lose, but more Jews lived through the war in Italy than any other place in Europe other than Denmark, which of course the story goes that their Jews were taken away and left Denmark before the Nazis could take them. So this is just a real passion of mine to get those stories out. And many of the families that you're going to be enjoying wine from and hearing from, their ancestors played roles. They hid Jews in their cellars while their fake passports were being made in Alba so that they could go north to Switzerland or continue to hide in Italy. And this is a part of Piemonte that people just don't know. And so I'm excited. And thank you so much, Romina. Thank you, Tiziana, and Anna, for letting me have this opportunity to speak to people about this.
I see two questions. Two questions came in. One is from Vito Bongiorno. Vito Bongiorno, do you want to ask the question directly? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm getting it wrong, but I had a wonderful wine last fall in Rome. Unfortunately, I did not have my iPhone with me, and I couldn't take the vino picture of the label. But I'm sure it was a Pinot Nero from Piedmont.
Yes, that's possible.
Can you or John tell me where are the names of the best ones are?
Well, I'm going to jump in. I'll let John follow me because you're going to hear from Donna Giovanna San Martino. Sorry, Donna Giovanna, for mangling your name tonight. Marchesi Alfieri was founded back 1600s when they started making wine there, but more recently the sisters have been producing wine. And the niece of Count Gavor, who was the one who brought Pinot Noir to Piemonte, she married one of the Alfieri. And as a wedding present, he gave them Pinot Noir, Pinot Nero vines. Now, these are not the same vines that he gave them, but these are old Pinot Noir vines that they are growing. It's the San Germano label at Marchesi Alfieri. And they are also making a Blanc de Noir from the Pinot Noir, 100% Pinot Noir, Metodo Classico. And so what state do you live in?
I live in Minnesota, Minneapolis.
Minnesota, you got it right there. And I think I'll have to find out. Anna, are you there? Do you know whether or not the Pinot Noir is in, the Pinot Nero is in Minnesota?
Yes, it is.
There are tons of Pinot Noirs, but
No, but this one is a very high quality. You would like it very, very much.
So you're saying I could find those at a liquor store here locally?
Yes. I hear from Anna Olivero. Her brother is the winemaker and president at Marchesi Alfieri. And Anna is very knowledgeable about the wines from that winery that are in Minnesota. I think she's helping to promote them. And MGM Liquors is of course one of your top
Sure.
retailers. And the owner, Mike Maglick, was at Alfieri last year at this time with me. And I believe that they are carrying that wine. If the wine, just to know, if the wine is in the state, even if the retailer doesn't have it on their shelf, they can get it if it's in the whole, if you know the wholesaler.
But can you give me the name of the winery?
Sure. Yeah, it's Marchesi Alfieri.
Ah, okay.
And it's the San Germano is the label. John, do you have any thoughts on the Pinot Noir?
In the Langhe region, which is where Barolo and Barbaresco and the Nebbiolo grape and Barbera and Dolcetto thrive, it's actually very ill-suited for Pinot Nero. Where Marchesi Alfieri is out further in near Asti in the Monferrato hills, it does maybe a little bit better. But where we're seeing a lot of it being planted is in the Alta Langhe.
The Langhe, yeah.
Yeah, and in the Alta Langhe, where it's being turned into some really marvelous sparkling wine. One thing that is actually astounds me about Piemonte is that the amount of champagne and sparkling wine that they drink up there. Mm-hmm. Almost every tasting I go to, at the end of it, after you've had like 6 bottles of Barolo, then you'll wash that down with a glass of sparkling wine. So of course, a lot of producers have turned their attention to it, and the Alto Langhe hills, much cooler. And much better suited to growing Pinot Nero up there. Mm-hmm. Germano Vira is one of Suzanne's families, right? Yep. I know they make a very, very good Pinot Noir.
And Del Tetto. Del Tetto.
Oh, yeah, Del Tetto, of course, too, in Roero. But they're not growing the Pinot Noir in Roero either because it's far too sandy and too warm. But the climate is changing away from being Pinot Noir friendly. So people are looking to if they're going to plant cool weather grapes, they're going to plant them higher and higher and higher. Most of it, the best Pinot Nero in Italy is in the Alto Adige, north of Trentino.
Right.
But I've had some very, very good Sergio Germano's, what's his,
Yes.
Torre Germano's Rossana, which is the name of his mother. He makes a all Pinot Noir cuvee of very, very dry, sparkling wine. It's unbelievably good. Anyway.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much for that question, Vito. And you can always contact me. Do we have my email up on the
Yes.
website?
Yes, yes.
Feel free to contact me and I can give you more information on where you can find those wines.
Do you want to take one more question or?
Sure, if we have the time. I'm not shy. I might mangle names.
How
but
did
I'm
you
not shy.
choose the families? How did you choose the families?
They kind of chose me. You know, I started, thank you so much for that question. I get asked it often. I'm really blessed. That's how I chose them, because I started thinking that I was just going to write this small book. I'm an attorney, but I had never written a book, and did a lot of writing. But I thought, okay, I could write about the 10 families that I know really, really well. Well, on the first trip that I went there on the project was in March of 2012. And I met Chiara Boschis quite by accident. And so I added her. So it was the families that I already knew for the previous one. At that time, it was about 14 years that I'd been going there. And then, you know, you meet one family and say, oh, you need to meet so-and-so, like Paolo Grasso of Caraballo said, oh, you need to meet Isabella Odero and also Elisa Scavino. So I met them. And then of course they say, oh, you need to meet Silvia Altari. So, you know, I put myself under a time pressure because I felt we needed to get these stories out. And so I went back, so I was there 13 in the spring, 14, 15 in the spring, and spent like 5-6 weeks there each time. And then when I was leaving in 2015, I said, okay, next year on the 2nd of June, I'm going to release the book at Caraballo in Barbaresco. I hadn't even written a single word. And I had at that point 22 families of chapters. I wanted to, you know, I wanted to write about Marchesi di Grisi. Unfortunately, Ludovica, the daughter of Alberto, wasn't in the winery yet. And so I didn't have those stories from her perspective, from the women's perspective. But we opened the book with Alberto's quote on women. But it just grew organically. And I could have kept going. I had one journalist that criticized me that, why did you choose this family or that family? And you should have chosen people with greater profile. And I said, no, I could write an encyclopedia, a set of books on all these families. So it was hard to say, basta, that's it. And since then, I've met even more families, which is why I'm writing the novel, because I want to tell some of those stories, and you'll see if you can pick out which families they are.
It's nice. It's really nice. I think we have covered all the questions for today, and I want
asking where to get the book.
Sure, you know, you can say it, and also is on the website if you want to mention it, you know, but it's always all the link are on the website. And if you want something special written from Suzanne, please just email her directly. She's going to write what you would like in the book. So I would like to thank you, Suzanne, for being here today. It's such a treat to have you here.
Thank you.
And John too. And also I thank everyone that came today to the meeting. And also remember that something really interesting is going to happen every weekend on Sunday from 12:30 to 1:30 every Sunday, the month of June. You're going to meet the families behind the most famous wine like Barolo and Barbaresco, and also we'll tell you where to find the best Piemontese wine, and specifically this specific wine. So all the detailed information about where to find the wine will come later when we meet the family. Okay, and also
and You'll be posting the complete schedule next week, right?
For sure. Next week, we will see the family. You will see what kind of wine they produce and where you can find in Minnesota. If you don't find in Minnesota, how to get it, you know, from someone that can get it, if you would like to, you know, buy it.
Thank you. Thank you so very much to the Italian Cultural Center of Minneapolis for this opportunity. And I thank all of you who joined us today. As I always say, anduma a Piemonte, in Piemontese, that means come to Piemonte. When the time is right, they are waiting and they'll welcome you with open arms.
Ok,
Thanks.
grazie mille. Ok,
Ciao.
arrivederci a tutti. Grazie per essere venuti.
Grazie.
Buona serata.
Buona serata.
Buona serata.
Buona serata.
Grazie, ciao.
Grazie.
Ciao.
Grazie. Ciao, ciao.